Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this actually little guy right here. This is the TRM Three Rivers Manufacturing Nerd. First off though, in the name of full disclosure, I actually paid for this, but I was able to get one of these guys via TRM. They just put one aside for me to take a look at, so figure I'll disclose that. Though we do have to assume then that this is the very best quality controlled one of these guys ever, and I'm doing my best not to let that affect the nature of my review. But anyways, there you go, full disclosure. Next thing, size comparison real quick. Guy is actually not a very large knife. Here it is against the Spyderco Delica, the Spyderco PM2 right here. We have it against the Ontario Rat number 2. And so what we see here is, yeah, pretty small. This is very much a smaller knife. And then actually a couple of other prudent size comparisons. Here it is against the Spyderco Dragonfly, which I think is in many ways its biggest competition in the knife world at the moment. And then against two other TRM products. This is a TRM Neutron right here, as well as a TRM Atom, wearing a similar set of pants, although in this case, yeah, a little different. So anyways, there you go. That is the TRM lineup, so to speak, or at least a part of it, the part of it that I own. And let's go on ahead and talk about the finishing here. This is as you can tell here, a tech wood, which is not actually wood, but it looks a lot like wood. If you show this to somebody with untrained eye, they're going to say, oh, hey, nice wood. But anyways, sorry. And this guy, as it's sold, is $179. They have one also that is in a very marbled bowling ball style carbon fiber for $209, but that's what we got going on here. So let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, the ugly of your TRM Nerd right here. So first off, this is made in the US of the A over there in Massachusetts, Three Rivers area, and that's a beautiful thing for some. I cheer for manufacturing in my home country, as I'm sure many of you do, so it's a nice thing to see. Next thing, this is a very nice little size for legality purposes. This guy is coming in under 2¼ inches. That means there are not that many places, at least here in the US, where this guy is going to be illegal, provided that locking knives are legal to start with, because this locks. And the size of this guy is actually quite small just independently because it is, well, very small. It's small because it is small. Wow, this is the kind of hard-hitting journalism you come to my channel for. But that actually makes this a very nice knife for the key pocket of your jeans, for instance. Especially with this deep carry clip. Yeah, that's a nice choice. Next thing, the wood on this guy looks absolutely great. I really think it's quite classy looking. For some people, wood certainly isn't going to be a thing, but wood actually has some benefits, if nothing else, in that it tends to soothe some of the fear that people have surrounding a pocket knife. And mind you, this is not going to be something that terrifies people quite so much as something a little bit bigger and slicier like this guy right here, but nonetheless, it is something to keep in mind, and I think it looks really, really good generally. The clip on this guy is good to go. You can see here it is what looks to be a modified version of the clip from the Atom, and it works. It's great. Solid little clip. It's got plenty of space up above there. I do wish these screws were a little bit were flush-fitting screws, but at the same time, you know, hey, whatever. They've got enough gap under here that it's not really a problem. And you've got plenty of you know, grip on it. Good clip overall. Next thing, this has some very nice details here. I mean, a couple of them, for instance, look at this area right here. The blade is actually, the contour of the blade, when closed, is following the handle. And then on this side here, the blade comes right up the top here. You can tell that they were thinking very carefully about the design here. One other thing I really like, actually, is the opening hole here. What you see in there is the TRM logo, which is, you know, been put into this opening hole. And then on the back side, which is the side you're going to use if you are a righty for flicking, it feels like this is actually a deeper hole on this side. I can't necessarily, I don't have, for instance, a depth mic or anything like that to measure that out, but it sure looks that way. And at the very least, they've put in a little bit of extra grip pad in the bottom there. This is a nice little detail, and it's something you can tell that they were thinking about. And overall, I gotta say, the branding on this guy is quite subtle. You've got the TRM logo inside there, and then on the other side here, you've got TRM USA 20CV. Which actually brings us to our next point, which is that the blade on this guy is good to go. It is 20CV steel, which is, if not the best steel right now out there running, it's certainly toward the top there, which is a beautiful thing. And it's using relatively thin stock. If we compare this guy to the Spyderco Dragonfly, we can see that stock thickness-wise, they are about the same, which is a beautiful thing. It makes this guy cut pretty damn well, and that's something I definitely do appreciate. Then finally, on the good side, this guy is very, very lightweight. This guy, if we throw it on the scale here, we are coming in at 1.7 ounces for 2.25 inches of blade. That makes this guy a very, very, very lightweight knife, especially for one that has full liners on both sides. I'm really impressed with that, and coupled with the relative smoothness of the knife, with the good clip and everything, this is really easy to carry. This guy, I talked to my buddy Tony Scullenbrady of Everyday Commentary about this knife, and he used the phrase, it carries like a river rock, which is absolutely true. Like, the whole thing is very smooth, it's very, you know, it's so nice in the pocket. This is so very easy to carry there. And so, to me at least, all that's the good, is that it's very lightweight, nice blade, good flick in action, some nice details, great clip. The wood on it does look great. It's got a super legal size, and it's made in the US of the A. Great side. I love the fact that they have continued to use the easy-to-replace scales on the Nerd line that they have done on the Atom and on the Neutron. This is something that TRM has been doing that really isn't super common elsewhere in the world, but they have scales that you can lift off and remove, yeah, that's how that word is pronounced, just by removing this clip, this screw, this screw, this screw, this screw, and this one, and the knife is still fully functional here. I mean, not only, I guess you could carry it without scales on there, although that'd be a little silly to do, but you can swap the scales around, and that's great, because not only does it mean that you could, in theory, find some scales that have a clip hole or a lanyard hole in there, which should be good if you're a lanyard person, because you can see they drilled one, but it also makes it super easy to swap on another set of scales, and that's actually something I take advantage of a fair amount on the Atom. I like the Atom very much, and, you know, sometimes it's nice to take a knife that you like already and, you know, swap it into something else for a little while, put a new pair of pants on. And so I love very much that they've considered to do that, and this is probably the biggest thing that sets this knife apart from the pack. There are a lot of relatively small, slicey knives out there, but the scale swapping thing, that's definitely it's definitely a nice thing. So, to me at least, that's what's great, and easy to replace scales. The bad side, one thing I'll note is it feels like they have blasted the detent ball path on that, and as a result, you can definitely hear, sorry for the shaken vision there, but nonetheless, you can definitely hear that this guy isn't quite as smooth as you might expect. Relative to, for instance, my Atoms, etc., they're just not this, it's not quite as nice there. And as a result, although you can flick it pretty damn reliably, that is, oh, and I think I probably should have mentioned that, it's on Foster Brown's washes, too. Although you can flick it pretty reliably, there are definitely moments where it's a little bit slower than you'd like. Next thing, I feel like on the wood, at least, it might not be a bad idea to have a little more texture. I mentioned that it carries like a river rock, and that's great, but at some level, the kind of texturing that you see on some of their other products, especially in these contoured scales, that does add a little something in terms of gription. So I might like to see a little patch of texture or something in there. But the thing is, in the future, because the scales are not, you know, an integral part of the knife, so to speak, that would be super easy to upgrade to later. So that's kind of a nice thing that they've done there. Next thing, the ergos on this guy are not amazing. Particularly the clip. The clip is very tall, which is great for carrying, but it's not as great in the hand as a result. Because you can see here, the clip is pressing directly down into your hand. It fills the hand a little bit better, and it is relatively wide, which definitely helps with the ergos, but it's definitely, this is not the ergonomic best ever. As a result of this clip, I'm not a big fan of how this guy is in the hand. And, you know, for instance, the Spyderco Dragonfly, which is its competition, also, it's got some hot spots there, off the wire clip and whatnot, but this feels just a little bit better, mostly because of the positioning of things in the hand. So that's something you want to keep in mind. Next thing, I think they could have gone a little thinner in the grind, actually. As we can see here from the sharpening choil and otherwise, you know, TRM has in many ways been making a name for themselves lately with knives like the Atom that are just super, super thin and slicey. And this is thin and slicey, don't get me wrong. But for a small knife like this, I would kind of like to have seen them go full on like laser, like super, super thin edge. I think it would have been just a little bit nicer, and I you know, take the grind up a little higher or do something else to make that possible, just because I feel like this is a little thicker than I expected it to be. And then finally, on the bad side, when I got this knife, and in fact, you'll see this during the disassembly video, this little piece went straight up at the edge there. This is not ideal, necessarily. There was just, the edge went right up there. And the problem is, as I'm gripping this guy, that meant that very often my corner, my finger was resting against the corner of the knife there. What I ended up doing is knocking that edge off myself using some diamond files. It took me, 10 minutes or something like that. But it definitely did make for an improvement in ergonomics when that happened. I definitely much prefer that now that I've done that. This is partly because that finger choil on the whole is pretty small. I have relatively small hands, and so in many ways this knife is designed for me. And I'm able to get a full 4-finger grip on this guy, but I can see a lot of folks not having that and wanting that choil to be there. So this is something they've told me that they're going to be revising for future runs of the Nerd, and it's something that's easy enough to fix at home, but it is definitely something I'd like to see fixed. So to me, all of that is the bad. Is that it needed to have that chin knocked down just a little tiny bit. I think they could have gone a little thinner in the grind, or at least I wish they would have. The clip ergos aren't awesome. It maybe needs a little bit more texture, and I do feel like they've blasted the detent ball path, making this guy feel a little less smooth than some of their other work in the past. On the ugly front, there's nothing particularly ugly here, so let's go into the final conclusion. Look, this is an absolutely very, very nice knife. I mean, at some level, it looks great. Well, at every level, it looks pretty damn great. It's got a good clip, a good flick in action, good flicking hole layout and whatnot, a nice blade. It is super lightweight, and they are carrying forward the swappable scales thing, which I appreciate very much. It's got a few little issues. The clip ergos aren't, amazing. They're kind of, they could push the blade thinness a little bit more, and it did take a little modding to be really in love with the grip on this guy. But mostly, I think it is a very nice knife. And the price on it, I think, is fine. We are a little bit pricey here, but it's 20 CV. It's made in the US. $180 for this. I can probably live with that. The biggest thing, though, for me, actually, this review took me a long time. Not honestly because it's bad or even particularly that strange, but partly I wanted to make sure that my love for some of their other stuff didn't, cloud my judgment of this, but partly I wanted to give this guy a lot of pocket time, and that's really where this guy excels most. This guy is a knife that is really, really great to carry. It is really excellent in the pocket. It completely disappears. It's smooth. It's easy. It's just, this guy carries like a freaking dream. But ultimately, my feeling ended up being that this is a really great little knife. The problem, though, is that the world's got a lot of really great little knives. I mean, the biggest thing this guy has going for it is the scale swap thing. And that has been a joy for the Atom and the Neutron. And I think as more of these scale options come out for the Nerd, I think it's going to be something that a lot of folks are going to love. I think that is something that'll set this guy apart a little bit. And it's also USA made, which will be a big factor for a lot of folks. But there are definitely competitors. And I think for me, the strongest competitor is the Spyderco Dragonfly. This is, of course, this is a one in ZDP 189 steel. And this is about $100 cheaper than the Atom, which is something to consider here. But it also does have a lesser steel. I would argue 20 CV is probably an echelon above. It's got a lesser lock. The back locks are a little frustrating. The construction's not as good, shorter cutting edge. And it is made overseas rather than the US, but it does have a thinner grind, and it does have better ergonomics, at least for me. And so for me, at least, I kind of feel like ergonomically speaking, the Dragonfly wins, and both of these are very, very easy to carry. But the thing is, for me, even though I think I'll probably end up sticking with the Dragonfly, I think the Nerd is absolutely a great knife, and particularly if you need that size range, if you need something that's very, very small, if you are a resident of Boston or something like that, and you want a knife that is very, very well done, it's quite high-end, and gives you that option of the scale swaps, and is made in the States, then this is absolutely going to be a great choice. And so, if that's what you're after, if you're just looking for a nice knife for your fifth pocket there, or if you're just a person like my wife, maybe you'll decide that you're happiest with a Nerd. Okay, anyways, there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.